Hi, this is the Social Jello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Jello with Angelo show.
What's up? Bonus episode. Welcome to Social Jello with Angelo podcast. If you follow my podcast, you'll know there's only one a week. This week, there's two. Hey, the best martial arts for real world self-defense in 2025. I am here with Claude Lawson, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor and Kajikembo instructor. And me, I'm also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor and Kajikembo instructor. But Claude outranks me. He's a black belt. I'm a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But long story short, not all martial arts are created equal, especially when it comes to real world self-defense. In 2025, you might be asking yourself, what are the styles that are actually effective? And there's ones that you probably already know. You're like, I already know. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, the end. But wait a second. MMA is not a style. It's a sport. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a style and a sport. What's up with that? Well, we're going to break down the best martial arts for self-defense and what works under pressure and what you should train in if you want to be prepared for anything. So just to start off this conversation, what would you say are the top martial arts for real world situations, Claude?
Oh, just going by what I've seen, Muay Thai is definitely up there. I would stick with of course Jiu-Jitsu. This may be a little unconventional, but old school Greco-Roman wrestling. You know, people maybe not count it as a martial art, but it's up there. You learn how to take somebody down or slam somebody, with a takedown. It's going to end the fight. Some kind of blade art with weapons. I would say Pikiti Tershi, just to pick one. If I want to pick one, and possibly it all depends on where you train. Kajikembo Krav Maga, something like that. Something that brings an art that hits with self-defense with contact, and actually tries to pressure test, your techniques.
And then
I would say I'll pick those five.
What I'm going to have to say right off the bat is I have to go after Krav Maga and I'm gonna go after Kajikembo too. I love Kajikembo, and I don't have too much hate for Krav Maga, but one of the issues that happens with Kajikembo and Krav Maga is, well, Kajikembo is not very well known, so anybody watching is like, Now Kajikembo guys know, and girls, but the Krav Maga folks they are more popular than Kajikembo, right? And because most people know what that is. But the problem is any seasoned martial artist will tell you that the effectiveness varies a lot between programs. Whereas the first ones you just mentioned, and I think it's because of how much stuff they're trying to tackle, right? In Krav Maga, they're trying to tackle the idea of real world self-defense, mixed in sometimes with sports applications. So like they're kind of all over the place, and they might be like, hey, we're only going to be focusing on knife, and we're going to do so much knife stuff that we're hardly ever going to touch. But that's why I think I like your list though, because you're kind of cutting through the crap right through really you're going to go to the Krav Maga school or your bladed arts school, because you said bladed arts. You're saying as an example Krav Maga, but something that uses a knife, that teaches you how to use a weapon. And Krav Maga does advertise that. So does Kajikembo. They'll teach you how to use a weapon. So does any type of Filipino martial art, FMA. They'll teach you how to use a weapon. So, but I like your list. That was at the bottom. That was at the bottom. That wasn't at the top. And I think that's the problem with a lot of stuff is if you try to put that at the top, putting Muay Thai at the top, you're emphasizing direct strikes, elbows, punches, kicks right off the bat. Sure. Let's learn how to punch. Let's learn how to kick. Let's learn how to effectively punch and kick while someone's trying to punch and kick at me. And then you brought in a grappling art like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then you brought in Greco-Roman wrestling, which I think is great. I just had a commenter on someone comment in the comments. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, comments, put them in there. I bring you up. And he commented, and I'm just going to bring him up right here on my phone here. It was at Lab Solves. Thank you, App Lab Solves, for commenting. Honestly, if you want to defend yourself, just learn freestyle wrestling and boxing or any striking, right? And that was a great comment, because a lot of people do overlook, you said Greco-Roman wrestling, a lot of people overlook wrestling because they say it's a sport. It's only a sport, right? It's only a sport. And me and Bobby Cerrone the third have talked about that. There's a difference between sport and martial arts. But what happens with it, wrestling particularly, is its accessibility. Maybe Greco-Roman's a little harder to find, but wrestling, if you're a young person, there's a wrestling program near you. Even if you're an older person and the program doesn't accept older people, you can easily grab. They'd be more than excited if you walked into a wrestling program. You're an older guy, you've never done wrestling, and you walked up to the head coach and like, I've never done wrestling, but I'd be really interested to try. I'm older. I have these concerns. They'd be more than happy to teach you wrestling. They're going to be excited about it because they're probably going to be about your age. The head coach will probably be about your age and have similar concerns. It's a great way to start. It's accessibility. You can more easily find a wrestling coach than you could a BJJ school in America.
I'll agree with that.
Because I mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very popular right now, and if you live in a big city, most likely there's a program near you. But if you live in a podunk town, no offense to podunk towns,
it all depends too, because it's possible. Small town, most schools will run they'll run a wrestling program for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So there's your list right there. Now, and we're kind of going into the next part. What makes a style? So we talked about why, and I mentioned a little bit why BJJ was really effective because you're punching and kicking, and someone's trying to punch and kick you. Why is BJJ and Greco-Roman wrestling effective? Same basic concept. You're grabbing someone, they're trying to grab you. We can simplify this, and I like things in simple terms because we could talk about more technical terms. I know a lot of you martial arts nerds that follow my podcast love the technical terms. We can talk about whizzers, single legs, high C's, passing guard, going inside control. But to simplify things, let's make it really easy for you. Someone's trying to punch and kick you, you're trying to punch and kick them back. Someone's trying to grab you, you're trying to grab them back. Someone's trying to put you down on the ground, you're trying to put them on top, putting them on the ground. These are very simple concepts. And then the last one, weapons. Someone's trying to stab you, you're trying not to get stabbed and trying to stab them. So or someone's trying to shoot you, you're trying to figure out how not to get shot. Now, the problem with the last one is you can only do it once. If someone's really trying to stab you or really trying to shoot you, and that's where the hard part is, the qualifiers. There are some great FMA schools out there. There's also some really shitty FMA schools out there.
That's for sure. And a lot of times when you're looking for them, you don't really know what, because there's all kinds of different names for different FMA schools, and you don't know which art is the most, let's say, practical or street effective, or just effective when it comes to any kind of confrontation. There are some that stick out, but most of them aren't they're not everywhere. They're not in your local area.
Yeah. And
now you did bring up something about Kajikimo and Krav Maga. You are absolutely 100% right about that. Depending on where you go, what school, and who's running the program, it's kind of hit and miss. And I hate to say it too, it's that way with Kajikimbo schools as well. The only thing I could say with that is you've probably been there too. I've been to kickboxing schools where you're right, punch to punch, the kick is a kick, but depending on how it's represented, it's still pretty effective. You just may not be training as hard as this school over here or that school over there, but you're leaving with techniques you can use right now. And after a few months, you can apply them. Or actually, when you walk out the door, you can apply them. But to be proficient, give you a couple of months, and yeah, you're pretty good with that.
Well, I know after my first kickboxing class, I walked right out the door and just punched an old lady right in the face. It worked great.
Oh, for a second, I thought you were going to say something serious. I'm like, oh, you punched right in the face?
She couldn't do nothing. She didn't even see it coming. I'm just kidding. I'm not punching old ladies in the face.
Was this New Jack City?
Grand Theft Auto. Either way.
Oh man, but
Japan edition.
Depending on which school you go to or Krav Maga school you go to, it all depends on, like you said, the instructor and the program. But a lot of Kajikimbo schools incorporate kickboxing or some type of art in that area. We can point out Benny Urquidez, we can point out Dennis Alexio, we can point out, I forgot the guy, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu MMA champion. John Hackelman's Chuck Liddell. There's so many you can actually point out fighters that use both, still within the art, but they don't use necessarily the self-defense or definitely not the forms. But there's ways you can practice any of that stuff. But you're right, it is hit or miss, even though I love Kajukenbo.
Yeah. And then to go into the interest, and look, I'm guilty of this as well. I run a Kajukenbo program, and it's not easy to run a program for people of all levels. You have to kind of lean into your market. And I know we're kind of leaning away from our main subject, but I'm just going to make a quick little caveat here. When you're running a program for you people running a martial arts school, you do, and I've talked about this in my content creation courses that I've been just putting out for free online. Check them out, socialjello.com. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. So like, when you're leaning into your market as a martial arts school, you might want to teach kickboxing, but the soccer mom doesn't want her kid doing kickboxing because she's scared he's gonna break his leg. She wants him to do more what Hackelman refers to as laundromat karate. That karate school next to the laundromat in your town that's sitting there doing more kata, and they got the nice belts and they get a little reward system. It might seem safer to do some of that. In my case, that's not really what's happening. What's happening with me is I have a lot of really young children, very young first graders. Most of my students are between first grade and fifth grade, and their grandparents started showing up because I said it's a family-friendly environment. Anyone can train. Can I train? And I'm like, yeah, I'll keep you safe. I'll keep you safe. But now the problem is that now you got grandma and the little kids training, and one of my MMA fighters comes into the class. They're like,
yeah.
Who am I going to spar with? You're not sparring your grandma. So you do have to, as a
little kid.
Yeah, go beat up on the first grader. so as when you're putting your program together, you do have to start looking at like adult classes, family classes, and all that stuff. And that's how you can clean that up. But I also know that a lot of, especially Kajukenbo guys, may not have the time to do that. They might not have the resources. They might not be 100% martial arts instructors with a school that's running 7 days a week. Some are, some aren't. Most aren't. So you're working at a community center, you're teaching 2 or 3 times a week, and that's where it becomes difficult as a martial arts. So I'm not trying to give you guys a hard time. I know some of you are listening like, "Whoa, I don't have time for that. How am I going to get that in my program?" And for those of you wondering why that happens, you'll go to a school and see a bunch of kids and a bunch of older folks, and it's not the group of people that you see yourself training with. That might be what's happening. And in that case, as someone behind the scenes, my advice to you is walk up to the head instructor and let them know what your goals are. Because you'd be surprised if the head instructor starts seeing enough young people come in. And that's why I always tell young people, bring a friend. Yeah. Bring a friend. Do you want to eliminate that? Because you might be in that podunk town. You might be in that small town that only does have the laundromat karate program. There's no BJJ. You found your wrestling place, but you want to do some striking. They don't have a kickboxing program. You could go to a laundromat karate program, walk up to the instructor and say, "Hey, I kind of want to do some more heavier stuff. I want to get into kickboxing stuff. What can you do to help me?" Instead of just like, "Oh, this is laundromat karate," and just walk out and write them off. Yeah. You'd be surprised. If they're legit, like most Kajukenbo guys are legit, and you were to bring that to the attention of the head instructor, they're going to recommend 2 things: either adult classes or bring a friend. This eliminates all of that. Bring another young man. If you're in a young man that wants that kind of resistance, wants to go a little harder, doesn't want to work with a first grader or an old lady, then bring a friend your age and let them know what you're getting into. That way, and this works well for any martial art, to be honest. Like if you go in with a friend, that's going to be the person. And if you're both really dedicated towards it, this is going to be the person that you end up opening a school with one day, because you went your whole journey and you got your black belts together.
So came up together.
Yeah. So what makes a style effective in the street? The streets. In a street fight, what makes a style effective, Claude? What do you think makes a style effective? We'll start with your list. What makes
Okay.
Muay Thai effective in a street fight?
Um, it's the technique. It's what you actually apply day in and day out in the same manner you would apply it in a street confrontation. There's no deviation necessarily. There's always variations as far as different people moving and all that good stuff, but how people move. But you're still going to use a punch. You're still going to use the kick. You're going to use the knee and the elbow. It's still going to be the same, regardless. How you train is how you're going to fight.
And then what makes BJJ effective in a street fight?
Pretty much the same thing. You have pressure. You're applying pressure to each other. You're and applying pressure to the joints the same way you would do it in a street confrontation. Takedowns are the same way. The arm bar is the same way. You have a resisting opponent, and you're learning how to compensate for that and how to move around that, and maybe meet it at certain points with strength. You're learning the ebb and flow of a real taxing physical confrontation. You practice like you fight. Now, I will say this: you're being nicer to each other in a class, and depending on, and I've always had this slight issue with competition versus, traditional old style, street jujitsu. Both can be practiced both ways, and it's the mindset of the instructor who's teaching and how they teach you how to apply it. I would not butt scoot in the street, and I wouldn't go upside down. It wouldn't go vertical on anybody. I wouldn't invert on anyone in the street competition. That, as long as you understand those things, it's fine.
And then I'm going to bring in a comment before we talk about our last two styles here real quick. Big shout out to Kane Corso 14, who's always asking me whenever I come up with it. I'm sure if I make a clip of this, he's going to come in the comments. He always asks me this question. He's like, "What do you think? Is training wrestling good for self defense? Is training boxing good for self defense? What is it about grappling that's good for self defense?" So like, and this is the question he's always asking me. Should I go into a boxing program? And I keep telling him, just do it. I hope he did. I hope he did. I hope he finally joined the program. He's always asking me, which program am I? I already gave him like 3. But his question is really related to a lot of people that don't do martial arts who are wondering where they can see anybody who doesn't do martial arts can gravitate. Most people gravitate towards striking. It's something very natural. I'm mad, I punch someone. I get mad, I throw a punch. Even if no matter who you are, you're gonna want to smack them, hit them, slap them, something. Maybe some people will grapple, but for that analogy of 90% of fights end up on the ground, what I want to say is, even though grappling does end up happening naturally, it's not your natural instinct. Your natural instinct is to punch someone or slap someone or strike them, hit them with an object. So with grappling, a lot of people have a hard time connecting the idea of when that's going to happen in a fight. And what I want to say, and I think I want to say Henry Gracie does a great job of doing this with his Gracie University program. If you see content, he's always showing you how after the first initial slap, first initial punch, the next thing that happens, unless your friends break you up, is grabbing each other, hugging each other. That's the next thing that always happens. 2 people hug each other, and if they don't know what they're doing, they tussle, they fall on the ground and roll around on the ground. And then whoever ends up on top starts punching him in the face. So if you get really good at that hugging part, and that's where grappling comes in. That's what I want to say. That's where your grappling comes in. There's a lot of things that you're going to do that would not come natural to you. Grappling is, while striking is a natural thing, there's a lot of things that you can become a very good striker on your own. You cannot become a very good grappler on your own because you can't grapple yourself. And we can't count that one thing that we're not going to count that one thing you do. Okay, we're not going to go there with that. So
not the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same. Those 2 things are not the same. But that's what we want to say about grappling. It's not intuitive, and that's where you need an outside source. Now, our third on the list is Greco-Roman wrestling, and I'm open that up to wrestling. How is that effective, and how is that different from BJJ?
The one thing you don't have is manipulating joint locks. That's one thing you don't have in wrestling. You have the throws, the takedowns. I would say wrestling with the takedowns from different positions and different types of takedowns, and learn how to the transitions in between, depending on how the person moves, makes wrestling very, very effective on the street. Greco-Roman with the throws, you can end any fight with a nice throw. Drop somebody on their head, back, arm, shoulder, whatever. and knowing how to control somebody to the ground. So getting in close one, everybody's seen a wrestler get in and shoot. It's hard if you're not ready for that. You're off your feet and you're already on your back or on your head. So that's my effectiveness as far as wrestling is concerned.
All right, and then finally, our
we'll group those together.
Our fifth, our fifth on the list. But really, then we have to bring some attention to the underbelly of BJJ. Is that depending on the beat, just like I'm trying to be objective here, just like I was objective about my own art of Kajikembo and how schools vary depending on who's there and what you're trying, what the goal is for the program. Same with BJJ. What's going to happen with BJJ is, although you are always going to have a competitive element, you're people. One thing that is going to vary is the idea on how they cover takedowns. And maybe in BJJ, they're having the same issue I'm having. They have a bunch of little kids or people, non-competitive students who are there to learn the art for defense and to avoid risk of injury, because there is a very high risk of injury when you start bringing in takedowns. To avoid all this, they're focusing a little more on grappling from situational sparring, a little less from a stand-up position, a little more on the knees, starting from your knees or starting in a situation, which is still great training, not knocking on it.
Very good.
But because of that, when we opposed to wrestling, where all you do is shoot for doubles, shoot for singles, sprawl, learn how to keep the person from taking you to the ground. There's a higher risk of injury, but your results are someone who really knows how to take someone down and someone who really knows how to keep someone from taking them down.
Yeah.
So that's just to clear up that. Not that we're picking on anyone's style. So, but now, finally, I'm gonna slash in. You said a weapon art. We'll say a weapon art.
Oh, Thursday or FMA.
Yeah, so we have three under this category. It's a subcategory on our fifth on the list. It's going to be we said FMA because it generalizes all our weapon arts. We had Krav Maga and Kajikembo. What makes them, if done right, no can defend? What makes the style? What makes these styles effective in a street scenario?
The beautiful part about, and I can't speak for every FMA art out there, but for a large majority of them, using the blade and actually weapons that are fashioned as such, even your practice weapons, you get a feel for how things would work. And as you progress in the system and style, yes, you become more fancy and can do certain things, but the basics of a knife, a club, or stick, using elbows and headbutts are the hallmarks of a good blade, knife, weapon art. So you're actually getting the touches in there. You're getting the feel. If you have a good instructor, you're getting the takedown, how to take somebody down by using the weapon as far as slashing an artery or a tendon or what have you behind the knee. You're getting that, and you're understanding how to pull that weapon at a moment's notice, or whenever you're confronted. Now, every situation doesn't necessarily require a weapon, but you still have that, because in between those, they have the gunting, they have the elbow strikes. There's a pugilistic side of FMA also that goes along with the blade and the stick. So you learn that also in there. So it's something else you can apply. Again, the problem with a lot of martial arts systems and styles is they don't apply enough realism into their practice, but you still get those touches. I'm sorry, there's no way to mistake whether or not a blade touches you, even if it's a practice weapon. So you get to feel those. You get the touches are the big thing, and with somebody who's resisting in some type of way, resistance training is the biggest deal with any of these.
And then what I'm going to add, I should have said this first, is Claude is also retired military. So, and we have to say that because what are your goals? And this isn't the main focus of this podcast, but when you are doing martial arts, what are your goals? This is something I'm always telling. I forgot his name. I gotta look him up again. Cadescos, number 19, I think it is. Sorry, brother, if I got your handle wrong. This is something I'm always telling Kane Corso. Like, what are your goals? How old are you? What are your goals? If you are in the military or if you're law enforcement, then yeah, maybe your goals align really quick with weapons because it's something that's gonna. Or if you're security, if you handle security, if your career puts you in a position where you're going to have to deal with these things, then it's absolutely, now we've gone from number 5 on your list to number 1 on your list. And you need to start working accordingly just because your job is forcing you there. Why is it at the bottom of the list for a civilian? Because this really shouldn't be something you're focusing on unless you want to go to prison. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, what's a common misconception about self-defense?
Every technique is going to work exactly the way that you practice it. Because it's not. Not even close.
And let's do examples. What's an example of this in Muay Thai? What's a technique in Muay Thai that works absolutely great in practice, but then in practice, but doesn't work well in either a combat sport situation or in a self-defense situation, that you feel like, yeah, it works great in practice. It's an awesome move to do. I love doing it when I feel comfortable, but I would never do it when shit hits the fan. I'm not gonna do this one.
Spinning elbow. I do know some MMA fighters that can pull it off, but that's once they found the timing to somebody. I never seen anybody just throw it from the beginning of a fight.
The spinning elbow. The spinning elbow. The spinning elbow. For me, it would be the jumping elbow on top of the head.
Oh,
the jumping elbow on top of the head. I love it. I've done it. I had to stop doing it in practice because you can't do it light.
it's very hard.
Yeah, a 12-6 elbow is easier to do when you're controlling a person, but once you jump into the air, it's really hard to do it light. And then I also found that again, same deal. The timing's really hard. Like, It's not my go-to. Like, we screw up. I'm gonna do a jumping elbow. Probably not. That's probably like a finisher or maybe unneeded completely. So like there are other easier techniques to do that get what I need to get done. How about in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? What's a technique that is awesome in practice? Like you can nail it in practice, but it's definitely not going to be what you do once you're out there in a real situation.
Oh man, flying triangle. No, when I was younger, I used to do flying triangle. But this is probably gonna make people mad. I've never been a fan of the Birimbola.
Okay.
Do you know why? If I drop and throw and come down with a punch, it's over.
Right.
If I drop weight and just drop a couple punches, it's over. It's a great technique. It's hard. If you get somebody who's really good at the Birimbola, it's hard to untangle your legs and try to find, because you got to immediately press the feet down. You got to press the knees down. Yeah. If you get lost, if you get behind a move, if you get behind, it's hard to catch up. You can still find your way out of it, but it's hard to catch up. But if you just drop straight down that knee, straight down when you first, I can't explain the movement because I hate it.
For those of you wondering what a berimbolo is, it looks like a breakdancing move where you spin on your back. You spin on your back to spin around the person's legs. Continue.
Yeah, getting underneath them and for a takedown. Yeah, if you just drop one knee straight down and throw 2-3 punches to the face, that technique is over.
And then actually, it's funny that you jokingly mentioned the triangle choke, but I will say the triangle choke. For me, one of the most effective techniques that work every time. They work well for me in BJJ, but I would never do them. I would never do them I would only do them as a last resort. Like, I don't know how I ended up in this position, but I'm going to shoot for this, but I don't want to. It would be a triangle. And it's because same thing. All it takes is the person to put a lot of pressure on me, put a lot of pressure on my neck, or pick me up and drop me, which is an illegal technique in BJJ, but very effective in MMA. And you'll see this happen a lot to BJJ guys when they start MMA. A lot of blue belts get into MMA, and I'm going to go for the triangle against like a kickboxer or something who doesn't know a lot of grappling, and they're thinking I'm okay, and all of a sudden they get picked up and dropped on their head because that venue allowed that, and they get knocked out.
I'd say even armbar and triangle,
and even when they don't get knocked out, it hurts so. I've had it happen to me so much. Like, I still have extensive neck damage from that, even in a controlled environment where we're not allowed to drop someone on their neck. I've been spiked once, and I've definitely been because it's still allowed. You're still allowed to pressure pass out over it. And I'm at an age that even in the sport, if the person starts pressure passing and putting my body over my neck, I'm letting it go because I don't want to. I don't want to be looking like Batman in the '90s, turn around and
Yeah,
Can't turn my neck. So like
that's what this is.
yeah, I don't want that. I don't want that.
I had that neck injury.
I've had it too many times. I get it at least once a year. So and I would like to stop. This year's my goal. Don't get that injury this year. So that's so there's BJJ. What's a technique in wrestling? What's a technique in wrestling, Greco? We'll just say wrestling in general. That again works great in wrestling, works great in the sport. Probably would not look very good anywhere else.
God, it's hard for me to on that. I'm not good at the ankle pick. Single leg, double leg, it's good. I don't know if I should say it's not good, but it doesn't fit me. I can't. I'm older. I can't bend down and get that with the ankle pick and push and get the shoulder and the ankle at the same time. Plus, on concrete, I don't know if I could get that without banging my knee up.
All right. And I'm gonna look at your ankle pick, and I'm gonna up you a proper double leg takedown. So in the regular, we have our double leg takedown where I go down slightly off level and do what they call a blast double. A blast double all day. Like I can blast double all day, but a proper double leg where you bring the knee down to the ground, you drag the knee down, you transition, you switch the leg, put your leg behind him, grab him, and then tackle him. At my age, can't do it anymore. And I could barely do it even when I started because I already had bad knees. So for me, the double leg, the blast double, I can go, but the actual proper double leg, I'm going to have a timing issue, and I'm afraid I'm going to get popped on the entry.
Right. So I agree with you on the blast double. It's because it's akin to a football tackle.
Yeah. A blast double is pretty safe in most situations.
Yeah.
All right. So moving out of wrestling. The dirty
Here we go.
The dirty three. The dirty three. Los tres amigos. Huh, here we go. We're gonna start with FMA. What technique in FMA that you think no, that's just not gonna happen? I'm sorry, FMA guys. No.
I forgot what I cannot remember what it's called. But you do it all when you pass. It's when you pass the weapon this way. You pass the weapon, where the hand comes in with it, and this here, you're supposed to keep the arm that you block close to the body, and then you recheck it with the other hand. I don't think you have that time in between the blocking and the pass. You don't have that kind of time because I think somebody's coming in like a sewing machine and stabbing fast. So you have one block and you have to hit. So I don't think that works the way it's. Again, I love the touches to give you sensitivity to learn how to move with the blade and to recognize through movement what is happening. But I think you have one touch and you have to cause some kind of damage or something, or get control of that arm so that you can do something else or disarm somehow.
So this goes back to our original conversation that we were having earlier about why some FMA programs are effective and why some of them are not. And I noticed the ones that I gravitate for that I like are the ones that are more combat. And you just mentioned the sewing technique. And the sewing technique is when someone grabs you, pins you, and starts trying to stab you several times. In any FMA school that attends to that immediately, I look as a good FMA program. Any FMA school that says, we're going to start with this figure eight, wushu kung fu looking, not wushu, Wing Chun kung fu looking thing, I don't like it. That's not where I want to start. Only because I know what a real knife attack looks like because I grew up in an area where it would happen. So I don't like that. For me, it's a red flag. As a martial artist, I'll do it. My instructor taught me to have a good time trying anything. And if you don't like it, have fun doing it. If you do like it, put it in your back pocket. But for me, that's the one thing that's the principle that I don't agree with is if you're starting off with flow drills and your flow drills, anything from empty, anything versus another thing. I don't like programs that start with empty versus knife. I love a program that says you both have a knife, and then now we're going to talk about after we understand how to use a knife. Now we're going to talk about if you don't have a knife, but we strongly recommend that you have a knife. Is usually the premise of any what I would consider good FMA program is you both start learning how to use a knife. So those are the principles that I'm looking for. Yeah.
I mean, I do agree that, like I said, the more touches you have, the more sensitivity you have, the better you'll be with it, and the more time. Repetition is everything. But like you just said, if you're not addressing that real street, what is actually going to happen? Somebody just trying to stab you, they're trying to kill you. If somebody's trying to stab you, they're trying to kill you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's no in between.
And for me, like if you're not addressing that first, like if you're not
Yeah,
addressing that first, I start being like, okay, well, when are you going to address that? Because
right.
if we're just doing a bunch of sensitivity drills and nowhere along the line, we're never. And I think that's what the Dog Brothers did a great job. The Dog Brothers address most Dog Brothers programs address that right away. We'll see if Kajuken will last because no one knows what it is anyway. Uh, sorry, not sorry. Krav Maga. I guess we're talking more principles. So I never did Krav Maga, but I already know I have a lot of things to say. But go
ahead. I think that grabbing the pads, running people through the gauntlet of type, hitting, punching, and dealing with a different scenario, somebody coming at you, I think that's great. I think that's great with Krav Maga. And it's not every school that does this here, where the basic technique is a kind of like it's almost like a downward block, and then you strike the head. Is a basic technique for Krav Maga, and they do it from different angles depending on if you're dealing with weapons or punches or what have you. I'm all about touches. That doesn't seem to be effective to me if you're doing this from a standstill and you're bending over at the waist and you're throwing a punch as a beginning technique. Anything you have to do, you have to address a weapon. You have to address a punch. And even when the times that you don't have to, you're getting blindsided. If you have enough time not to get a sucker punched, and you can see it coming, right? You still have to do something. Your body's going to move. This is the natural flinch. This is the natural flinch. But you have to do something. That is not a natural reaction. It's
yeah.
That's not a natural reaction. Okay, to somebody throwing a punch at you and that you're just barely seeing or what have you. Now, if you're ready, okay, I can see you doing something, but I can see something. You're gonna have to. I don't want to say what this system is, but you're gonna have to attack the arm, and you're gonna find that gap in between the weapon that's being thrown at you, and the head. You have to control one or the other or both, and then you have to launch your attacks from there. Unless you're a good boxer, so you start going to.
So,
but that's what I don't think this works.
And since we are addressing common misconceptions about self-defense, I think the biggest problem with Krav Maga is the common misconception is for their self-defense. Their common misconception, and this is their biggest weakness, is the idea that they're going to disarm someone, a gun, specifically gun. I've seen many, and Krav Maga is super guilty of this. Out of all the arts, it is the most guilty of showing someone with a plastic AK or a plastic M16, and they do this. Ooh, now I have the M16. No, go. Or the weird hostage situation, the John Wick cover of the DVD with everyone pointing a gun at him, and then suddenly like throw, and like I don't know how they're holding 15 guns, but they're like holding all the guns, right? Like that's the common misconception about Krav Maga that they really got to stop. Like, just stop. And because just stop. They walk in. When you walk in, if you're a Krav Maga instructor and you come in and you're sitting there in a room trying to sell your program at a school, and you're sitting there in a room with kickboxers, MMA coaches, and you're telling them, "Hey, my program covers how to take away an M16." The head instructor might let you teach the program just because they're not covering that, but they're all making fun of you when you leave the room. I'll just say that right now. Looking out for you, that's all. All right, bro, I'm just looking out for you.
I will say this for Krav Maga and for the military self-defense and weapons retention techniques. You can't have a bunch of them. To even address using a rifle or a handgun or whatever, you need less than a handful in so many different situations. The rest is some luck, right? And tenacity and ferocity and how bad you have to want to kill somebody. Okay, it's an animalistic thing that you have to have. It's not just a technique. It's not just you learning a specific technique for anything. That's the truth of it. I get showing 20 techniques to take a M16 away from somebody, but it's 2, 3 scenarios or 2, 3 techniques and umpteen scenarios. That would be more effective.
All right.
My 2 cents.
Your 2 cents are worth more than mine because I'm not. I was never in the military, so.
But that's the only way I can see it. You can't have a bunch of techniques. You have a couple techniques and you run scenarios. And if you make those curriculum, those scenarios quick curriculum, there's a problem.
Yeah, if that's your core, going kind of like what we talked about FMA earlier about.
Yeah.
If your core is this, if your core is not addressing the main issue, if your core is just disarms of M16s and AK-47s, and that's day one, and you're not talking. You just mentioned a good point, and I'm not military, but you mentioned a good point about weapon retention. So you would actually, just like an FMA, 2 people holding a knife, in a gun scenario, how to hold on, how to keep someone from taking your gun. You start with that.
Yeah.
Start with you have the gun. Start with you have the gun, and you're trying to keep some idiot because you're not. Something went really, really wrong. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know. Like if you're a civilian, especially if you're a civilian, something went really, 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 really wrong. Or maybe really right if the person with the gun got really close to you. But there's a lot of things that happen. But we'll start with weapon retention. I'm not gonna go in. That's like a whole other podcast. Last one. Kajikembo. What's a technique that you would say it's got to go? It's a common misconception. What was that? One more time.
Inward blocks.
Inward blocks. The inward block. This one. Don't like it.
Yeah. Hate it. What is? I'm sorry if I'm. There are those coming behind it. Now, here's the funny thing: long outward block works.
This one. Oh, this one. Okay. Oh, this one. Okay.
Because it's just
I call that one. I call that one the up block. But okay, yeah.
Well, this upper block here, but the long outward
block. There. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Long outward block. It works.
All right.
Because it's similar to just long outward works. I've seen it work in a tournament. I've seen it work in a street fight where guys just swing. It's like boom, and he led with a right hand, drop the guy. It works. But are you going to do that against a boxer? I don't know.
And I think it depends. It depends on the inward block. I think the one you're having beef with, and this is one I have beef with too, is the one where the guy throws a straight and you're supposed to do an inward block and parry the punch and then hit him in the bicep.
Trick one.
Yeah, like that's what you're supposed to do. And what you're gonna find is if you have someone who doesn't know what they're doing, well, there's a lot that can be said. Once you have someone who doesn't know what they're doing, like there's a lot that you can do. But
yeah, there's a lot
against someone. Yeah, there's a lot you can do. But against someone who knows what they're doing, it is really hard. Just like my triangle choke. See, look, we're being objective. If any Kajikembo guys stick around line, and then the coach says, no, it's because you're doing it wrong. Your seafood didn't teach you that right. Right. So like before we go there, the context, right? I talked about BJJ, something I feel comfortable with. Not that I haven't done it, but the inward block to the biceps hard, but a small, and at this point it's so subtle it's barely considered an inward block, but it's the same concept in my head, is a person throws a jab and I do that. Instead of going I just go either boom or parry. Bap. The concept to me is the same movement, same concept, right? It's still kind of an inward block. I'm not going for the bicep though. I'm going lead hand comes in, bap, I just bap just to open up for a straight. So and again, this is like a small, but it's not this.
No,
not this.
Hammer, that's a hammer. It would buy hammer.
Yeah. It's not this, and it's definitely not this. And so that's what I will say about that. But now that was your technique. My technique that I would get rid of, and I did get rid of, is in self-defense, keeping your hands down. You know, all of our punch tricks, making it karate style with the hand drawn back, and then me doing the blocks, more of the blocks that we don't like. That whole concept to me is bad because you're teaching your student to keep hands down. And I never understood it. I don't, and if you do that, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to criticize what you do at your school, but I always found it counterproductive. Why are you telling me to do self-defense like this? But then when I start sparring, dropping my hands even a little bit, you're like, keep your hands up, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. The second someone starts putting pressure and I start losing any sparring match, starts yelling at me to keep my hands up. But you trained me to put my hand here.
It's down, yeah.
Self-defense.
It's trying to mix the
So,
traditional and the modern.
yeah.
It's one of those things. One's got to go.
And again, like I'm not saying I don't teach it. I still teach it in my karate basics, and I say that to them. Right now, we are covering karate basics. So that if anybody asks you if you do karate, you can tell them yes. This is the karate part of our program. And I believe in transparency, and I tell them that. So when we're sitting there doing our horse stances and karate blocks as a warm up, I tell them we're doing this to warm up. And this is the karate part of our training. And for some of you that aren't weight training, for the grandmother and the grandfather who brought in their first grader, and I'm talking about yesterday.
Oh,
I tell maybe this is not the first time.
No,
that's not the first time, and I know it's not going to be the last. They're going to call all their grandparent buddies. This guy lets us train with our kids here. We're coming. So like, maybe for someone like that, this is the most exercise they'll get all week. They're not going to the gym. They don't have a gym membership. I wish they would. I hope I can encourage them to get one. But this is your average grandparent, soccer mom, these kind of people. Maybe for you, adrenaline rushed, veteran, MMA fighter, black belt, this is no longer needed in your training. Maybe you have I know for my personal training, I'm not sitting in a horse stance doing blocks. I'm doing squats, lunges. I have a whole weight training program I'm doing. But for a beginner who this might be the only time, now you can argue, Hackelman would argue, then make them do squats. Yeah, I can make them do squats, but some of these old people, I don't think they can do a squat. Like, I don't know if their body is capable of it, but I know that they can sit in a modified horse stance and get a little bit of leg resistance going. And even though I told him, hey, do a deeper horse stance, like, do a deeper horse stance, and he's still standing like almost straight leg, just knees slightly split. Like, well, maybe that's going to be progress for today. If that's all you got, that's all you got. I'm not going to tell. I don't know. I don't want to ask how old they are, because I don't want to, because that's how old they are. They're old enough for me to be worried to asking them how old they are. They might get upset. So I'm like, they're that old. And I'm like, I don't think I should be pushing this. Like, deeper horse stance, you 75-year-old. Like, I don't think that's a way to go. So again, but going back to what I just said, like, I understand, and there's context to everything. So even though I do have a problem with the draw hand back in punch tricks, I don't have a problem with it if you're transparent about why you're doing it. Like, hey, we're stepping away, and this is a misconception about self-defense, right? We just said, what are misconceptions about self-defense? And one of the misconceptions is if I do all these traditional techniques, there's some sort of secret sauce in the traditional techniques that connect to me defending myself. And sometimes the secret sauce is just training. So like, and everybody starts somewhere, and that's where your secret sauce is. So like, even though I still do these things, I tell them, this is for our warm-up. This is to warm up. This is to warm up different muscles, to give you. Also, I'm psychologically training you. Can you listen to me? If I tell you to do a punch from your right hand and I do a mirror image for you, can you copy that? I know this sounds stupid, but for a beginner, you'd be surprised how many beginners I say, all right, we're going to punch. No, I'm not going to overcomplicate this. We are going to punch. We're going to sit in a squat, and we're going to throw a punch, and we're going to start with our right hand. And I almost want to guarantee you, I can bet $5 that there's a 75% chance that beginner is going to start with their left.
With the left hand, yeah.
Even though I said mirror image, right hand. And what am I doing? I'm trying to teach you how to learn. That's what I'm trying to do. So by starting with these stupid basics that someone who's an MMA fighter or already a kickboxer or who has already been training on their own coming to my program, they're like rolling their eyes like, how do I do this? This is stupid. Like, I already know my left from my right. I'm like, that's good for you.
Right.
Most of the people in this room don't. Good for you. Maybe, we'll talk about maybe putting you in the advanced class, Sam. Where I don't do this stuff. Like, there's an advanced class, I don't do this stuff. But these beginners, they need this. So that's my rant. So, what do you think? Did your style make the list? Drop a comment below. Maybe it made the list in a good way. Maybe it made the list in a bad way. Go ahead and share your thoughts on that. And I want to thank Claude Lawson for coming out and dropping down some knowledge on the best martial arts for real-world self-defense in 2025. One episode about martial arts and content creation here at Social Jello with Angelo podcast. If you liked what you saw, please share, like, and subscribe with your friends. And I'll catch you next time.